Well, I think when people say that the Arab Spring began everything, started everything, I think inevitably there was a reason why, because the events were so spectacular and people hadn't got used to seeing them. And so in many ways people wanted it to believe that it was something new and fresh, which it was, and many of the people trying to participating in it were saying so as well. But I think one of the dangers is that people, even for the decades before, hadn't really taken much notice of the Middle East. Outside the Middle East itself, they'd either seen it in terms of war, so the war, occupation of Iraq, they'd seen it in terms of terrorism, they'd seen it in terms of established power, but what did they know of what was going on? And of course people who study it do and are aware of it, but that isn't sort of mass perception. So I think one of the things about the Arab Spring and why it made people think this is where everything begins is because it was such a different way of seeing the Middle East than the way that people have normally got used to. No hooded militias, no violent anonymous gun battles, this was something else altogether. So I can understand why people did it, but I suppose one of the things we have to do as students of the Middle East is think, well, what was it that led to it? What was it that created it? And that's more interesting in some ways. It's quite difficult to know which of the artworks is the favourite. I think that I would have to divide them into categories. So my favourite of the street art of Egypt is probably Ganzia's pictures, and I love the one of the sweethearts of the regime. In other words, Mubarak surrounded by his cronies in little parts, and very much captures something about that, which I think is wonderfully powerful and ironic and funny and irreverent and just very, very skilled indeed. In terms of the so-called formal artworks, sort of fine artworks, I think in some ways the works by Abdelkir, the Syrian artist, both the ones that he did in the 80s, the 90s, but also now, I find incredibly powerful, very, very powerful indeed.